What's up, everybody? Carolina Jackpot time checking in. It's Wednesday afternoon, April the 18th, 2018, and we're going to jump into part two of my really early season, not so early, too early, maybe whatever you want to call it, way too early prediction video for the South Carolina Gamecocks 2018 college football season. You know, it's never too early to start talking about football and what we think is going to happen and breaking down stuff and breaking down teams and how we think the season's going to go. I'm going to make some more videos before the season actually starts. When all the publications come out in midsummer, Field Steel and the Streets and Smiths and all this good stuff, that is where I get a lot of my information from. And, being a guy in my 40s, I guess it's for some of you younger viewers, maybe you guys don't appreciate the magazines. You don't appreciate that stuff, the print media, like I do. But, that's the kind of stuff I grew up with. I was always hunting for the next thing that I could read about my team or about football or basketball or whatever kind of sports, we were into right then. There was no Facebook. There was no Twitter. There were no vlogs, websites, none of that stuff to go to. We either read it in our local paper or, we waited until the national publications came out. And I guess that's why I'm still kind of tied to this stuff. And I'm just still really get excited for this kind of stuff to come out and wait on it. Today's generation, I don't think really appreciates that kind of stuff the way we did. But some of you older guys on here, and I'm 43 right now. I don't call myself an older guy, but I guess I am. If you look at it in the grand scheme of things, so the Kentucky Wildcats be the fifth game on the schedule for the Gamecocks this year, and they are replacing their quarterback, Stephen Johnson. I was reading some stuff up on them. I subscribe to every team that Carolina's going to play the next year on Twitter, and look at all their stuff that's going on, and I try to keep up with them. Stephen Johnson, who was their quarterback last year, did a serviceable job. It turns out, I never knew that this guy was injured like most of his career. He was really playing on injuries most of the time he was at Kentucky, and really did a good job to be there and just show up and play the games. And he was the starter. So hats off to him. He showed up at their spring game this year on crutches. He had some surgery a couple of months ago to repair some injuries that he's incurred over the past couple of seasons. Quarterback in Kentucky. So my hat goes off to Stephen Johnson. He's a heck of a young man, competitor, and really tough dude. I don't know this about him, but at any rate, 3 of the past 4 years South Carolina's played Kentucky. We've lost 4 in a row. 3 of the past 4 have been winnable games by Carolina. Last year's game was the one that really wasn't contested. It was really over at halftime. If you watch that game, the mood in the stadium had just dropped by halftime. It was terrible. A lot of Gamecock fans who really aren't in the know are going to sit here and say, well, it's because we lost Debo Samuel in that game. That's why we lost. No, that's not why we lost. That game was lost way before that happened. Debo got injured in the third quarter. This game was over at halftime. There was no air in the sails. There was no air in the tires. There was just no pep in the team. They weren't ready to play. And this year, I'm looking for us to come out ready to play this game. It's in Lexington, which is not really a vaunted place to play. And Mark Stoops is going to have a quarterback battle on his hands to replace Mr. Johnson. Benny Snell will be the running back. He's a really good, talented player as far as that goes. One of the better ones in the SEC. This quite possibly, if you look at it coming in, that might be the best returning running back in the SEC East, as it were. Unless we can see what Georgia's got to offer. They're always got some running backs down there in Athens. But Benny Snell's a tough dude. They were 7-6 last year. Started off the season really strong. Kind of faltered there when they faced some tougher competition towards the end. They were 7-5 going in their Music City Bowl game against Northwestern. actually were behind in that game and came back and made it close at the end. And I can't remember. I think they went for a win instead of going to try to send that game into overtime. And I really didn't understand that from Mark Stoops. I guess it's because he had the momentum, so he decided to go for a win, and they got stuffed and ended up losing that game. But they had the momentum, they had the crowd support, and so I really didn't understand that. Kind of made me question him as a coach and a decision maker. But past 4 years, he's been better than us, so I can't fault him for that. But this year, I think things are going to be different. Carolina's going to be ready for this game. They're tired of losing to Kentucky. I mean, it's not acceptable. I mean, the fact of the matter is, we could reel off 10 wins in a row against these guys, and nobody's going to forget 4 years in a row when you beat them, when you lost to them and you should have beat them. So this game, I'm not ready to call a win just yet. I'm going to give us, in this one, I'm going to give them a half. Because until you prove to me that you can beat them, I'm not going to believe it. Easy as that. Pretty simple. Let's move on. Next game, at home against Missouri. The Tigers, prolific offensive team. Drew Lock returns. I believe this is his senior season. And Drew has some skill players around him that can, he can score some points. They were in an uproar over there at Missouri a couple years ago. They were about to just dismantle the whole university. Craziness. Gary Pinkel, the coach, at the time, had cancer, and he ended up, he kind of gave up and resigned from the team there at the end, which, he probably coached on past the point that he should have. Barry Odom was defensive coordinator at the time, and they named him head coach because he was who the players wanted. That's who they wanted as their coach. He's a player's coach, kind of like Dabo Swinney over there at Clemson. I don't know really how Mr. Odom coaches this team. We don't. Missouri's one of those teams that they're in the SEC, but they ain't. I mean, it's like they are so far removed from the geocentric area that our conference operates in. They're just like, it's kind of like you don't even think about them. So I don't know if he bonds with his players by going to class with them, or hanging out with them after practice, or talking them up, or what he does. And he's got the do-wop feel good stuff going on like Dabo does, or what, but they are certainly endeared to him. It's kind of strange. He was the defensive coordinator. They're not really a defensive team. Gave up a lot of points last year, but scored a lot of points. They ended up with a winning record, and it was kind of hard to come by. They lost some games at the beginning of the year. Lost them at Gamecocks. They lost, a game to Auburn at home a couple of weeks after they played us. It was absolutely dreadful. They lost by like 40 points. Lost to Purdue at home like 34-3. I mean, just got absolutely drugged. We had beat them in week 2, and we thought, we're on the rise. Deebo Samuel's done returned 2 touchdowns, 2 kickoffs for touchdowns, and all this, and we done beat Missouri and they in the SEC on the road, and we railroaded them, and then the next week they go out, and Purdue from the Big Ten just absolutely just annihilate. So we're like, well, maybe that win wasn't as impressive as we thought it was. But it turns out they turned their season around. After the Auburn loss, they played Kentucky, had a close loss there, played on the road at Georgia, and they lost, I believe it was like 52-25, but they hung with Georgia up until halftime. It was a nip and tuck game. And then the second half, just superior depth and whatnot from the Bulldogs, and Kirby Smart took over. But they did play, over, what they should have there. And kind of laid down foundwork the rest of the season. They beat Tennessee, they destroyed them, they destroyed Florida, destroyed Vanderbilt. They went to a bowl game against Texas, and lost a close one there. It was the Texas Bowl, I believe it was. Finished up 7-6 on the year when that season looked like it was lost to start with. I mean, it looked like it was just absolute trash, and they came back and made a go of it. So I look for Missouri to be. They're not going to be an easy out for us at home. We played them at home in 2016, and it wasn't easy then. We got a victory there for Coach Boom. It was like his second or third SEC victory, and this one's going to depend on skill position, skill players, and what they got going on. That we know Drew Lock can throw the football. I just don't know who he's throwing it to. Like I say, Missouri is one of those teams I don't know a whole heck of a lot about. I know they're always good offensively, so we know they're not going to have a problem putting up points. It's just, can they stop our Gamecocks? I don't think they can. It doesn't really matter who they're putting on the field. I'm going to go on ahead and give us in this one a win at home, sight unseen, not knowing that much about Missouri, like I said, other than Mr. Locke and Mr. Odom. But this is one that South Carolina should be victorious at home, and barring some kind of miracle, great team from Missouri this year. Texas A&M is the next opponent. There's also a home game. Another team that's been Achilles' heel for the Gamecocks past few years. Kevin Sumlin's teams, we're 0-4 against them since 2014. They joined the conference, in 2014. First game on the SEC network, their first game in the SEC, absolutely drug us at home in a game that we were favored by like 10 points. And it kind of showed us that, hey, this is the beginning of the end of the Steve Spurrier era. Texas A&M since then has kind of failed to live up to expectations. They're normally a team that starts fast and finishes very slow, but that was under Mr. Sumlin. Jimbo Fisher's taken over this year, and with new coach comes new ideals, and the same old just doesn't cut it anymore. I look for them to be a little tougher. I look for them to be a little more competitive. And I look for them to take advantage of the talent they have. This is another sleeper team that I feel like South Carolina needs to get them this year. Just like I talked about Georgia. I think we need to get them this year because I feel like in the future, especially the next 4 to 5 years, I think this is going to be a really good team in the SEC that not a lot of teams are going to fare too well against. It's a home game. I want to chalk it up as a win, but I can't right now just because of the fact of the history. There's that history. There's always that in the back of your head. That's like, I just don't know what's going on here. So this is another one where I am going to go on ahead and give the Gamecocks a half in that game at home. Texas A&M just not confident enough in us to give them a win on that one just yet. They got a quarterback battle of their own going there. Nick Starkel and I think his name is Kellen Mond, the one that Gamecocks played last year. Two pretty good kids. Jimbo Fisher got a decision to make. Tennessee at home after an off week. Jeremy Pruitt's squad, they're expecting some big things from Jeremy Pruitt. A lot of people are saying the team looks like it's in better shape, better condition, physical, and more disciplined than they were under Butch Jones. That remains to be seen. We'll see what happens. I think Butch Jones, personally, was a good football coach. I just don't think he was a good fit in Tennessee. I don't think he was a Tennessee guy. I don't think that he was an SEC guy. I think Jeremy Pruitt is. That being said, I don't know how good of a coach Jeremy Pruitt is. I think that Butch may have been a better football coach, but just may have not really belonged in the SEC. We'll see. Pruitt, he's got another quarterback battle on his hands, the Jarrett Guarantano kid, and they'll have one coming in this summer, Keller Christ, graduate transfer from Stanford. One thing about Keller is he lost his job to an underclassman, last name of Hogan, at Stanford. Wasn't Hollywood Hulk Hogan, brother. His last name was Hogan. I believe it was Kevin Hogan. That being said, they have a few returnees, and Pruitt's moving them all over the place. I think that this one will be a win for the Gamecocks, certainly at home. Don't know that it'll necessarily be easy, but we're going to take the victory over Tennessee in week number 8, and we'll give us a win on that one.